Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. And before I get to our guests here today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, to please give a like and subscribe down below. I'd greatly appreciate it. We have Danielle Willis on the podcast, coming to us all the way from California. I'm already embarrassed enough based on what the weather. I mean, she says it's horrid there, but like I told her before we started recording, her horrid is my dream weather, knowing what the weather's like in Minnesota. But she's an IFBB women's bodybuilding pro. She's also an actress, a choreographer, and a business coach. So she's basically a jack of all trades. But most importantly, she's our current guest. Danielle, thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, yes, Ryan. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, I know you described it as horrid, but I always ask every guest, what's the weather like in California where you're at right now today?
And just like I was telling you, I feel like it's straight out of the good book. 40 days and 40 nights of rain, rain, rain. I'm ready for some sun. Not like we're going out, but it would be nice to maybe step outside for a little bit and feel some sun on me.
Yeah, I mean, we got some snow yesterday here in Minnesota, and luckily the snow is gone now, but it's currently 40 degrees. And, obviously we are recording this during the coronavirus epidemic or pandemic, whatever people want to call it. And I'll get into that a little bit later on the podcast. But what I like to do, we'll get her backstory a little bit before we start that. So for the first question, I mean, I always ask every single guest, what was your motivation and how'd you get started in bodybuilding? What's your backstory?
So basically, my journey started kind of, I was at a crossroads in my life. So I used to actually work for a publication firm, and I also was in the nonprofit game for a very long time. And I am still passionate about it and eventually want to get into that as I go along in my career. But just like any young person that is out of college and kind of still trying to figure it out, I was kind of not happy, honestly, and wanted more for my life. I've always been very ambitious, and my background is communications and media, and I love entertainment, and I love creating and art, and I just felt that all of those things that I'm passionate about weren't properly being utilized. Had a great boss and all that, but I just felt that where I was in my life just wasn't cutting it pretty much. And, you get to that 30 mark and you start thinking about these things, right? And so basically, long story short, parted ways for my job and just started training super, super hard and got with my coach, David Ellis. And this was 2016 is when I started, right? This is when I started. And I was at the time working a side job, and I was working a side job at Costco. You got to get the bills handled how you can. And so 16 bled into 17 and just worked and train really hard. And then fast forward, we get into 2018 and I started to really see some changes in my physique that I liked. And we went to the Olympia that year. And I always love bringing up the Olympia 2018 because that was my aha moment. That was the moment where I looked at my coach and I'm like, I can do that. I can do that. I'm a dancer. And sidebar, before I go too far, I actually still teach. So I teach dance currently. Now we're doing it online, but I was at a studio called the Inland Empire Dance Center, and I've been there for now going on 6 years. So my background is in dance and in choreography and art and all performing art and all that. I actually am 31 years now in the dance game. So that being said, and seeing old bodybuilding videos from my coach and being at the Olympia, it all culminated to this point. I'm watching the women's physique competitors perform and pose, and it just sparked something just deep inside me. And I said, I want to do that. And I literally signed up that night for my first competition, Iron Games. So that's how that came about. And I competed a couple months later in November of 2018. And I won that show. I won the overall in women's physique.
That's awesome. I mean, and I gotta say, she doesn't look a day over 25. That's one of the benefits of bodybuilding and working out too. I gotta say, I mean, we so many of the benefits that people don't realize is that, I have some guests on here that are 50 years old and they don't look a day over 30. So if there's one other benefit for people for working out, that's one for sure. And she's living proof of that. But I always ask every one of my guests, because everyone always, when they first walk into the gym, I always say, if you were to walk in and there's 100 people in the gym, there's 100 different ways as to how those people got into shape, whether it comes down to the way that they've dieted or the way that they work out or how many reps they do, what exercises they do. Was that a struggle for you when you were first getting started, sort of figuring out what works best for your body? Because if you were to walk up to someone and say, hey, what'd you train for that body part? It looks great. What works best for them 99% of the time is not going to work as good for you.
Exactly. It took a while for me to get a groove going, especially when it comes to legs. And I have bad knees. So right off the bat, uh, I had to really learn how to train around that. Even still now, just the preparation that goes into doing legs for me is a lot different than other people that I talk to. I have to prep at least 30 minutes, 45 minutes doing certain exercises before I even get into the main, event. So my leg workouts are 3 hours, maybe three. It depends, and that's because of the warm ups that need to go into my knees, and then I also have a sciatic injuries that I also have to be mindful of. So yes, telling somebody to giving a cookie cutter, explanation to somebody of how to build the physique that I built, to me, doesn't do somebody any service, because you have to take into account people's pre-existing injuries or conditions of their bodies, certain limitations. Again, what I can or cannot do wouldn't apply for you. So I always try to be mindful of that when I'm giving advice to other people. And then also starting out, I kind of trained kind of a hodgepodge. It was a mixture of shoulders and arms and leg. It was still trying to figure out how to properly target everything. And now I have it down to a science. I have a shoulder day. I have a back day. I have an arm day. I have 2 leg days. I have a chest day. It's all scheduled and regimented, and the exercises are all designed for each body part. So definitely a progression in how I train now as opposed to 3 years ago.
I always sort of compare it to being like a mad scientist where you're always sort of trying to concoct your own potion and see what works best for you. And it's so much trial and error, which is one thing that I really think when people are first getting started, getting in shape, that's one thing that they are really going to have to adjust to. But you sort of led me perfectly into my next question, because I always say genetics are one of my favorite things to talk about, because so many people, especially in this day and age with technology, they look at people's photos online and they say, oh, I want her arms, or I want his abs, or I want their back. They don't realize that, you can only be the best version of yourself, and you don't know how they got that look. You don't know how they train it. You don't know, the nutrition that goes into it. People just don't understand that. And they're just, especially in this day and age where everyone wants everything yesterday, but they don't realize that it's such a timed process where it's going to take you for so long. But whenever someone first gets started working out, they always have that one body part that really, really takes off. And then they always have that one body part that just lags behind, that they have to train to oblivion. I mean, I'll give you my examples first. My back, just because I had jobs all throughout college of working in warehouses and lifting and loading boxes into cars, you either got a really nice back or you quit. But I'm also 6'3", so my legs and my lower body are just shot, where I mean I have to train them into overdrive. I completely understand what you're talking about when it comes to legs, where it is, my hell day, where I have trouble walking the next day, but it has to be done. But what were those body parts for you when you were getting started?
Um, I always had arms. Always, even when I was young. I
They're basically breaking through the screen right now. Jeez.
Yeah,
Here,
I
give us a front double by. Let's see the guns. Yep,
yes,
yeah, she's
I'm
got
proud
them.
of my peaks.
Jesus.
I I was called Buff Cat in high school. That was one of my nicknames. So, people and fans, oh my goodness, we love your arms, we love your peaks. How did you get them? They are genetics. I always had arms as long as I can remember. So I barely trained them. I'm one of those people, if I only train them maybe once or twice a month, I'd still have peaks. So that is genetics, my friend. um, and then I would have to say, ooh, but see, this is a byproduct of training still. But I came into the bodybuilding game with good hams and good calves, and that's because of ballet. So I know a lot struggle getting hamstrings and calves. And I'm grateful that I have had years on a lot of people, because that's all you do in ballet is a lot of leg work, a lot on your when you're on your releve, when you're on your toes, you're activating those muscles, you're activating all those muscles. And a lot of those exercises still to this day that I do when I teach, I'm constantly getting my hams worked out and my calves. So right there, that was already a given going into my training. So now I've just been able to just enhance and make it better. And I'm yeah, I'd say those are the ones: hams, calves, and arms.
With those are, I don't even want to talk to her anymore. She's already making me jealous already. I mean, we're only 10 minutes into this. Geez, but yeah, I mean, that's why I love asking that question, because so many people are different. I mean, we've had people, yeah, that just like calves are my biggest pet peeve. I'll just say that, because I always said I could inject pure muscle into my calves and they wouldn't gain an ounce. Which, I mean, being a pitcher in baseball, you'd think that I would have decent, but it's just a never-ending struggle. But I love asking that question because it does, show that so many people are different. We've had so many different answers when it comes to that. But probably the number one thing that the general public doesn't understand when it comes to the bodybuilding lifestyle is that your nutrition is 80 to 90% of the results that you get. I mean, it is ridiculous how many people don't understand that and how important it is. What would you say was probably one of the bigger nutritional changes that you made when you first got started in bodybuilding?
Well, I cut out dairy. That's one of the things I definitely cut out. Uh, I also attribute keeping in great shape year round to not consuming alcohol. I cut that out. I cut that out for. I cut that out kind of almost. I wouldn't say it goes hand in hand, but I stopped drinking the same year that I really started training, and haven't touched a drink in almost 4 years. So you know, I never have to worry about the falling off the wagon or anything like that. So that's very important. Um, and I'm still actually trying to master this, eating more and smart. So I am learning how to balance and portion and eat enough to build the muscle, because just like people want to lose weight and you have to eat a certain amount of meals, a certain type of way for a certain amount of time. If you want to build muscle, you need to eat a certain way, a certain amount of meals for a certain amount of time. So it goes both ways. And I'm learning, especially now in trying to put on the size and to get bigger, if you mess up a day, that can set you back tremendously. I can see myself go up on the scale and then have a poor eating day where I don't eat enough, and then all that hard work in the gym, all that hard work just goes down the drain. So that's where that I don't want to say learned because I'm still learning, and it's a process. So
100%. I mean, just like I should really just retitle this podcast into trial and error, because that's really one of the big themes that we always talk about on here is, and like everything else in life, but especially in bodybuilding, you are just constantly having to evolve, and you don't want to get, you have to change up your workouts too. You can't really stick to the same thing. So it's always an ever evolving process. But one of the big myths and stereotypes that I love to bust on this podcast, and I ask every single one of my guests about this, because, I always say it's gotten better the last 5 years due to Instagram, but still, unfortunately, there are some women that still have that fear that if they walk into the gym and they pick up one weight, they're going to put on 50 pounds of muscle overnight. And, I always say to that, first of all, I would pay you my entire life savings just to talk to you then, because you would be the biggest commodity of all time. And, it's just so not true, but I still hear that all the time from friends. And I just love to just prove that. Did you ever have that fear when you were getting started? And even if you didn't, I bet you still hear that all the time now. How do you like to respond to that?
I didn't have that fear at all, actually, but um, I I do tell people that the only way you're going to build is based on repetition. So you can't expect yourself to pick up a weight, even the heaviest weight you've ever picked up in your life, and expect your muscles to just blow up and grow and expand like that. That takes time, real time, and repetition to even start seeing transformation and changes in your body. Now, yes, going back to the genetics, if there's a particular part of your body that responds quicker than others, then you will see the changes quicker than another body part, yes. However, will you blow up and look like the Incredible Hulk because you decided to start going to the gym 2 times a week? No.
And again, if that does happen, I want to talk to you.
No, not, and again, going back to your point, not only is it the training, but it's also the nutrition as well. So you could go to the gym 2 days a week and your diet be just god awful and horrible, and you won't see any changes at all. You'll be working against yourself. So
that's like 90% of everyone that's ever gone to college. That's their that's what happens to them. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Good one. Yeah. So the notion that you can just go in, once or twice a week, and I'm speaking to the average everyday individual that maybe goes to, let's say, I'll be generous and say 3 times a week. You go 3 times a week and you lift, you do a couple exercises here and there, and then you don't follow up with a good diet or routine. You're not going to blow up at all. If anything, it's going to work against you. So that notion is just, that notion to me, just, I don't even entertain it.
Yeah. It is ridiculous. But going off of that, I mean, I always say one thing that I think impacts women so much more positively than it does men when it comes to working out is the confidence boost that it gives you. I mean, we have heard hundreds of stories on this podcast of, men and women who have been able to take that confidence boost that working out gives them and use it to impact their lives in a positive way. And I always say that is the one thing that you can take from the gym and use to impact every single aspect of your life. How have you taken the confidence boost that working out has given you and used that to impact your life in a positive way?
Well, I love I love being a bodybuilder, and I even call myself a muscle queen. Like, I've embodied it. I feel like, there's true power in being strong, and I feel like the physiques that we create are art. And I've been able, through my fans pages and other outlets, showcase my art to my fans, and the love and support and admiration that I get has has fed me in a way that, I never knew that muscle was celebrated as much as it is. And I wish that it was more celebrated on a broader scale. And that is what I'm hoping women like myself and the new generation of bodybuilding can do. We can transcend bodybuilding and really make it more mainstream, and make more people see the true beauty in muscle and in strength. So I think that bodybuilding has just done tremendous things for my physical and my mental. And I could never see myself going back to the old physique or the old way ever again. It, I totally embody being a muscle queen, and I just love
Well, and
it.
that's awesome. And yeah, honestly, if I look like that too, I do the same exact thing. I mean, I would honestly just wear as little clothing as possible every day, even if it's like negative 20 degrees out here. I'd still be, wearing cutoffs and sleep. I mean, I would just flaunt it like nobody's business. And I totally understand that. But I mean, another thing that is not understood when people are talking about this bodybuilding lifestyle is that, and this is the one thing that fascinated me and surprised me the most when I started having bodybuilders on the podcast, is that for so many of these bodybuilders, posing is the hardest thing of this lifestyle for them. I mean, it's harder than your nutrition. It's harder than your working out. I would never would have guessed that in a million years, but now I like to compare it to being a perfect driver, where you could be a great driver. You can never be a perfect driver. You can be a great poser. You can never be a perfect poser. It's always ever evolving. What has your experience with posing been like?
Very good uh, phrase, ever evolving. It's so true, because even though I'm a dancer, truth be told, learning posing and the art of it and the mechanics, it was frustrating and very um uh I had to really dig deep, because you have to make sure that your body hits everything in a way that you're not accustomed to, and then make it look effortless and make it look beautiful all at the same time. And that is an art. I joked with my coach when I was practicing the relaxed pose, and I said, whoever came up with the term relaxed pose for this particular pose, they had a sense of humor on them, because that is one of the hardest poses to master, especially as a beginner competitor. And to stand on stage and to hold that pose and smile, and you want to command attention. You don't want to look stiff. You don't want to look nervous. All those things that can come up. You don't want to look uncomfortable, but that, right there, I remember just being so, in the beginning, especially, just frustrated. And I'm also a perfectionist. So, when I would see myself in video or looking back, I'm like, oh man, especially if I had a reference, oh man, I wish I had hit it more like this or hit it more like that. And just really getting accustomed to how to make that mind body connection, because you make that mind body connection when you are lifting, but it's a mind body connection to posing, because you have to really, tell your body to hit this, hit that, and all while making it look, like I said, effortless and beautiful. And so, a real mind body connection comes into play when you are really trying to hit those intricate poses and those mandatories. And um, and practicing over and over, because repetition is really how you're going to master it. I look at my first show to when I got my pro card, like night and day, and that was 3 shows, so I look at my back double by as opposed to from first to third, and go night and day. So, you know, and I take it really seriously. Posing to me, like you said, to me, posing should be number one. I know physique is number one, and I get why it is number one, but I feel like posing should be number one priority.
Well, I always say too, you could be the most muscular person on the planet. If you don't know how to pose, good luck. Good luck competing at a show. I mean, we've seen so many times that it's someone who might not have as good of a physique, but they have the technique down, they have the posing down. So that I totally agree when you say that it should be number one. But out of your mandatory poses, what is your favorite pose and what is your least favorite pose?
Mm, my favorite pose would have to be back double by, and it's also one of the ones where I think I do the best. And I would have to say my least, and I need to improve, my lat spread. I'm getting better, and I've been practicing actually more, but my lat spread.
Can I say that you are the first guest to ever say lat spread for a pose that they need to work on? Normally, it's like abs is like 90% of it, because I always think that that's such an awkward pose. But yeah, lat spread, that's a tough one as well. I mean, especially learning the first time to flare them out. We've heard so many stories about that. Is one that probably takes the most time to master for people, is doing that, just because it's just
Yes.
so unnatural of a thing to do, and you really have to feel it in your body, and you really have to develop it.
Yes, you do. You do. You really do. Especially once you build the lats, you have to build and create the lats to work with. And then, learning how to relax them, to flare them out, and making sure your shoulders are back enough. And and arching, and all of it. It's just hitting it all at the right time to make it. Yeah, I'd say lat spread.
Oh yeah. Yeah, by far. But you mentioned your pro card, and I mean, I always love to ask this on the podcast for any of my guests on that are pros. What was that experience like when you won your pro card? Because for anyone out there who might not be familiar with it, for these bodybuilders, winning their pro card, for a lot of them, that's the highlight of their career, just because that's the affirmation that they've put their all that hard earned blood and sweat into the gym, and it's finally paid off, and they can compete at pro shows. What was that feeling like for you when they announced your name and you realized, oh my god, I'm a pro now?
Well, so a lot of expletives. So I was so shocked. I First of all, it was it was a struggle getting to Pittsburgh. It was not your textbook prep as far as traveling and being able to be ready for prejudging. I had delayed flights and wasn't sure if I was going to get there, and wasn't able to take my pre contest diuretics, and wasn't able to really properly prep myself the way that I wanted to. Even planning ahead, I still had all of those deterrents. So going into Pittsburgh, I was so riddled with anxiety and nerves. And it was hard enough that I went trying to get my pro card out of redemption from Vegas, and I ended up getting eighth in physique. So even though I had a glimmer of hope going into the night show, having had won bodybuilding, I was not under the impression that it was a surefire thing for me because I had to win the overall. So that was very daunting, you know. Okay, I went, I came here and glad I did two. I'm glad I did two, but I was trying to get it in physique. You know, initially, I was trying to get it in physique. So mentally, I was totally messed up. I was totally messed up going from getting third place in Vegas and missing it by one to now being told you have too much muscle for physique and being told this is what we're going to give you. I had to really dig deep, 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 deep. And so yeah, fast forward to that moment when they said my name, I was shocked and grateful, obviously, but definitely didn't expect it because of all that I had went through going into that moment. So much went into that moment. So yeah, I was like, oh, okay, okay, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening. Like literally having that combo in my head as I'm walking up and getting the trophy and smiling. So even my coach, you can hear my coach in the video going, I can't go through this again. Like even he was rattled and unnerved and wasn't expecting it either. So we were both just ah, and I took it. I took it. I took it. And then it's to me, it was just it couldn't have been more beautiful that bodybuilding is back in the Olympia. So for me, it was getting my pro card, bodybuilding coming back in the Olympia, me getting my pro card in bodybuilding and being told I had too much muscle for physique, that made me go, oh, I'm staying in bodybuilding. And you know, I this is where I belong. And so that's where we're at right now.
That is so awesome. And I mean, I can't imagine what that feeling must be like to, after all the things that you go through during prep that people don't, the general public doesn't know about, to just finally, getting that pro card. I mean, I always say find that one thing in your life that you really, you can really count on and that really gives you that feeling and stick with it. And I mean, it's great that you found that. But another myth and stereotype that I love to bust is, so many people don't understand this, that look that you guys put on stage, that is not a sustainable look. We have so many people that believe that misconception that, oh, they must look like that, year round. And I think it's a lot of it's because maybe shows like Biggest Loser that come on where, people lose like 200 pounds and sometimes they're able to keep that weight off, or people look at that and then they say, oh, these bodybuilders who have worked just as hard, if not harder, they must be able to, maintain that shape year round. But they don't realize that you have dieted down, you've manipulated your water, you're actually at your most unhealthy when you step on that stage when it comes down to your body. What was that experience like for you when you first realized that, hey, this is not the healthy version of myself, and I'm not going to be able to look like this year round. I am going to have to put on some weight in the off season. Has that gotten easier for you to accept as your career's gone on?
Oh yes, definitely. And there's so many uh, things that can go wrong with prep as well. That what your body endures, the cramps, and you know the dehydration, and messes with your sleep, and just a lot of things that you have to go through to look like that. I remember my second show waking up at 4 a.m. the night before with cramps crawling up my leg that wouldn't stop. It was one of the worst feelings ever, just to try to look my best the next day. So it's definitely not attainable or rational thinking uh, that we can stay that conditioned all year round. And in order for us to see true changes in our body, we have to allow our body to rest and to grow and put on size. And I'm also learning that as well. And it's definitely important. Definitely.
And we got 3 questions left here before we go on to the coronavirus and talk about that. But I mean, I always love to ask because it's a training technique that I became familiar with when I was familiar with it actually before I started the podcast, but I didn't really practice it. But since so many people recommended it, I've started doing it, and it's gotten me, great results. It's time under tension. Do you like to use a lot of time under tension in your training?
Uh, yeah, it depends. It depends on what body part. Um, a lot of upper body workouts, like arms and like shoulders. I really will, use that. Um, but legs, obviously, I can't, and back, I take my time with back because that's one of my biggest body parts I train.
Yeah. It's definitely one of those training techniques where, yeah, obviously legs is one thing where I would never do that for time under tension wise, because that's just asking me to, hate myself for the rest of the week basically. So yeah, I totally understand that. But one of the things that I really, there's so many positive things that happened to me when I started working out and getting bigger and stronger. But the one negative thing for me is that you're going to get asked to move a lot of people's furniture. You're going to get asked to open a lot of pickle jars or bottled water, anything that's sealed on tight. You're the go to strength person. I mean, I'm still at home with my parents, and every time they come home with groceries, I basically have to lift the car into the driveway and carry in the groceries, being the good son that I am. Have you found that that's a similar experience with you where people just take one look at you and they just assume that you can do favors for them?
Yes, my family, I love them, but my mother and father, I haven't, since the whole corona, I haven't been able to go visit them, but every time I go visit them, she always has some big task, some big thing that needs to be moved or carried, or I'm like, and a couple times I had to tell them, you guys, I'm getting ready for a show. I remember last year they were going through some home renovations and wanted to move some things around. Oh, let's ask Danielle. No, don't ask me. I have to conserve my back, And then, of course, fans, you get asked the craziest things, oh, I want to see you lift a car, you look that strong, or like, can you bend a bar with your bare hands, you look that strong. So yes, I get it a lot.
Oh, I always said for me too, it's a double-edged sword because being 6'3", I mean, I could have zero muscle at all, and they'd still be like, "Oh, tall guy, come and help us." So it's definitely one thing that I've adjusted to. But my favorite question to ask our guests on here, because I've had men, I've had male, I was gonna say male, female bodybuilders, but I've had male bodybuilders and female bodybuilders on the podcast. And for the men alone, I mean, their clothing options are severely limited. But for women, I mean, your clothing options are severely limited when it comes to finding clothing options that fit for you. I mean, I always say dresses aren't your best friend. Jeans are another thing that, are just almost non-existent if you have a big lower body and a small waist. Good luck finding jeans. I mean, your clothing options can be very limited. What are some tips and tricks, or what are some ways that you try to compensate for the fact that you have to have a limited wardrobe at times, and the fact that, I mean, when you're going through prep or when you're in your off season, you basically have to have 2 wardrobes as well.
Sure. I mean, I pretty much live in very stretchy clothing. So, leggings and, like stretchy tops. um, and, I love the warmer time because, bikinis, they don't restrict. I mean, I know that's not for your everyday woman, but it is such a process trying to wear normal clothes, especially when you manipulate your body to not be the typical everyday size. So I can't remember the last time I was able to find a pair of jeans that fit me. I'm in between sizes right now. So again, leggings are great.
Well,
and
Well, yeah, and I always say too, yeah, jeans. If you could invent something like that, that would be perfect. And yeah, with your arms, yeah, it's like good luck finding some sleeves for that. I mean, it's almost non-existent. So yeah, you really do have to, really compensate for that. And I mean that in and of itself is impressive enough for me when it comes to bodybuilding. Is the clothing sacrifices that you have to make, not even going into everything else that goes into this lifestyle. So that's just impressive enough for me. But I mean, we are in the middle of a pandemic, and I just want to ask you first off, how have you been dealing with this pandemic? I mean, a lot of people don't talk about the mental health side effect to being, locked up all day. They just talk about, the safety aspect of it. But how have you been, dealing with this pandemic? How have you been coping with it?
Well, keeping a routine still is so crucial to everyday survival. The days can bleed together, especially now that we're going on almost a month of this. And who's to say how long it's going to continue? So I live and die by my list that I create for myself every day. And I make it really repetitive, and I am very with intent as well. So um, I mean, again, living with bipolar, I also check in with my therapist. And I say to anybody, even if you aren't clinically depressed, having someone like a therapist, if you are struggling with anxiety or some kind of depression, because right now I know there are a lot of people that aren't working, that are out of jobs and have to figure out how they're going to support their families and support themselves. And I say that having someone like that is so invaluable, and can really help. And then also, I am very creative, as I stated earlier. So I've been writing a lot. I'm working on a book right now about my struggles with mental health. Hopefully, as a means to help other people and inspire other people. So doing a lot of writing and creating as well for my fans. I've been trying to do things to inspire and encourage them, and that gives me happiness. Inspiring other people and trying to give other people hope right now, even on days where I'm kind of struggling, or I'm feeling broken, or I'm feeling sad. Sometimes I those are the times where I decide to film, and those are the times when I decide to film and post and share, because I feel that I want other people to know that they're not alone in this. And you see it every day. Unemployment's going up. Like what, 16 million or something, I believe, is the statistics now. That's startling. That's depressing within itself. You don't have to be a sufferer to know that those numbers mean that there are a lot of people hurting right now. you know, Try to make sure you stay connected with somebody, whether it's a therapist or whether it's a family member or a loved one. Writing your feelings out, trying to keep a routine, and not deviate away from the things that were keeping you together and were keeping you going. I think that those doing those things right there will help, during this time. And also, I also want to say, trying not to overindulge as well, and trying to still watch what you eat, because again, sometimes putting too much junk and too much garbage in your body will mess with you as well. So trying to be mindful about what you're ingesting and putting into your body, and not overdoing it. Because I see a lot of people that are like, "Oh, I'm just gonna let it go. I'm just gonna and I just don't think that that's the right thing to do either.
Oh, 100%. And what advice do you have for people that are looking to try to stay in shape during this time? Because I know, with the gyms being closed, not, I mean, I'd say, probably like 10% of people have, some basic workout equipment in their house, but the vast majority of people don't. What advice do you have for people who are trying to still maintain, that level of fitness that they had before this happened?
Well, going back to diet again, that's important. So keeping your nutrition up, whatever your goals are. So tailoring your diet to fit those needs, whether it be to put on or to lose. Uh, if you can, getting some weights, some or you know getting some things you can put together in your house, like jugs, for weights, or different things that you have in your house, just or bands. You can order bands off of Amazon. There are a couple at home things that you can order off of Amazon. I'm getting one of those, like the overhead for the pull-ups, so I can do those. And that was like less than $30. So, there are little things you can do. And, there's tons of do it yourself workouts you can do, tons of at home stuff you can look up. So, trying to designate a time where you can, try and do full body. And just an FYI, training at home, obviously, you're not going to see these improvements. It's not like you're going to just grow, but you will maintain. And that's the important thing, is at least maintaining and not losing what you've worked so hard on. But again, the nutrition is also important as well. It goes hand in hand.
The only people that are going to grow during this are the people that have like their own, basically, like Arnold Schwarzenegger and The Rock and those guys that have like their own, gym that's 10 times the size of a normal gym in their house. They're the only people that are really going to be successful from this. But I mean, I would get killed in the comments if I didn't ask you this, because so many people are probably, thinking it right now, and they say, oh, ask her what she trains for her arms and stuff. And I know that you said that you only train arms twice a month, but obviously I have. So what do you train for arms when you do train them?
So standing dumbbell arm. So I do the arm dumbbell curls, seated dumbbell curls, um, preacher curls, um, try pull downs on the cable, skull crushers with dumbbells. I'm running through. So I did some skull crushers, try pull downs. Sometimes I'll take the cable for my tries and go overhead. And there's one other exercise.
Did you ever do the cable curls? That's one that a lot of people do too.
So sometimes what I'll do is I'll put a dumbbell. That was the last one. Thank you. I'll put a dumbbell down and sit on it and do the curls that way with the cables. So yeah, those are my go-to exercises: the seated, the standing, the try pull down, the overhead, the preachers, and the cables. Yep.
Yep. Yeah. And that's, obviously, as we can tell, it has worked. But I mean, I always love to ask this before we wrap things up. I mean, if we were to talk to you a year from today, what are some goals that you'd like to have achieved? I mean, hopefully this virus will be, not necessarily taken care of, but it'll be a back burner and we'll all have been back to our lives for, a decent amount of time. But where would you like to be at a year from now if we were to talk to you?
Definitely want to do a pro show. And so hopefully I will have done at least one pro show. I hope to have all of my projects that I'm working on, my book, and I'm working on my YouTube channel, hopefully have those up and running. And I am hoping that, in the next few years, I can have a top 10 or top 5 finish. That's my goal. So right now, I'm actually going to start posing practice soon. And I can't wait. I'm going to start with Melvin Anthony. I can't wait for him to be my coach. And those who don't remember Marvelous Melvin Anthony, you need to look him up. He's amazing. So I'm grateful. First I had Chris, and now I'm going to have Melvin. So I'm very grateful that at this point in my career, I have two legendary bodybuilders and posers that have been able to instruct and help me. So I'm using this time to really dig deep and work on the things I need to work on, uh, maintaining my physique the best I can, but really working on the stage element and different ideas. Because again, I think that that's truly how you win the stage is how you perform and how you present your physique.
Absolutely. And we wish you nothing but the best in that. And I'll leave a link to your YouTube and all of your stuff down below for anyone to get in contact with you. I mean, I love helping out my guests. So yeah, I'll leave a link to everything of hers down below. And lastly, is there anyone that you'd like to give a shout out to?
Ooh, yes. My coach. I love my coach, David Ellis. I owe so much of where I'm at in my life professionally to him because he's been my mentor, he's been my coach. He helps me with my food, supplements, every single thing. He's my go-to. And especially right now during this time, I'm so grateful that I still have him to rely on to sustain me and keep me going so that I don't lose what I've worked so hard to get, physique wise, and keeps me motivated to keep going and keep pushing, even though there's no set date or time for when I'm going to step on stage next.
Yeah, and obviously I'll give a shout out to him as well. And again, Danielle, we cannot thank you enough for coming on the podcast and for sharing your journey and for, just giving us an update. And honestly, like I said, we wish you nothing but the best. And honestly, again, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Ryan. I totally enjoyed myself, so I'm grateful that we got this time.
Well, I couldn't think of a better way to end this than you embarrassing us again. We got to see the peaks. I mean, they're just too good. Can you give us another front double by?
Of course. Ah,
Can you do the pop thing where you just like pop one? That's not even fair, everyone. I mean,
yes, I perfected the pop.
that's just absolutely ridiculous, everyone. I mean, that's insane. And again, you guys go and give Danielle a follow on her Instagram, and I'll leave a link to her YouTube and everything else. And this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing out. Have a great day, everyone.